in memory of the forgotten children of Storyville and beyond. New Orleans True Crime, The Cases of Daisy Haines. Creating the district known as Storyville did not prevent women from getting in trouble for trying to make it on their own. The newspapers are riddled with stories from this time about court cases resulting from the arrests made in Storyville and the areas surrounding it, like E.J. Brown, aka Bessie Haines, aka Daisy Parker, aka Daisy Schlitting, aka Lily Brown, aka Lily Haney, aka Daisy Haines. I chased this woman across Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana to try to understand the life of a forgotten well-known woman and the people surrounding her. I'm Leah Pearl, and this is New Orleans True Crime, The Cases of Daisy Haines, How Storyville Worked. She was primarily known by the name Daisy Haines, and her life over about 2 years and 4 criminal cases in New Orleans is illustrative of how the lives of those in the trade of sex were often wrapped up in the criminal justice system, even though it wasn't explicitly outlawed. 1908 through 1910 were some of the prime Storyville years, with the New Orleans Terminal Station completed in 1908 on the corner of Basin and Canal. Travelers getting off the train could see women waving semi or completely nude from the windows of their cribs in Storyville. Daisy came to New Orleans around 1906 from Mobile, according to one source. She was originally from Birmingham, according to another. She also claimed to be from Mississippi, in another. She was married in 1884 to a man named Parker, according to her oldest son, who had the last name Parker. She married a German immigrant named Schlitting in 1909 in New Orleans. In between, she had 4 children who were given the family name Haney. In the 1900 census, she was living in Amite, Louisiana, with her 4 living children. Her address in New Orleans was 1712 Arado Street, which I did confirm in several sources. In fact, the address to the 8-room boarding house she ran was the link that allowed a lot of the pieces to connect, in spite of Daisy's many aliases. Arado is one of the Greek muses, the goddess of erotic poetry and imitation. While the street name seems like an easy choice for a red light district, this location was outside the bounds of Storyville, which was one of Daisy's charges. On the night of her arrest, she was accused of enticing 3 underage girls into her immoral house. Daisy always denied keeping an immoral house. Quote, "It seems from what was said later that Miss Nellie Scahill, a relative of Katie, last night saw the girls in a Carondelet streetcar and noticed that they alighted at Arado Street, and she quickly shadowed them and saw them go into the Haines woman's house, rushing into the grocery nearby. She had the grocery telephoned to the police, and soon Special Officers Glenn and Clifton at the place demanding the delivery of the girls." Unquote. The first story they told the police under questioning was that Mrs. Haines had visited them at the factory where they worked several times, offering room in her house. They refused her at first. The Times-Picayune recounted the tale on September 18, 1908. Quote, "On Tuesday, the Haines woman was seen about the factory. She encountered the girls and talked to them. As for the O'Neill girls, she had quit her work then because of a row with another girl, and she was willing to accept their proposition to go to the Haines house and live there. On Wednesday, the trio got together, left the factory, and went directly to the place. And Wednesday night, the man, who is not known as yet, went into the apartments of Gertie and Ada and ruined Ada." Unquote. The girls further told the police, quote, "The O'Neill girl said that she wanted to leave at midnight Wednesday, but was restrained by the woman, who insisted that she remain, and in a day or so all would go to Macomb City." Unquote. Daisy is described as a 33-year-old woman and smart-looking, but also a fighter who refused to answer their questions. In her interview, she claimed she was from both Birmingham and Mississippi, a mistake which caused her to stop talking. When they finally took residence at 1712 Arado Street, the 3 girls encountered a drunken newspaper man. They didn't know who he was and only knew he was a newspaper man because Daisy told them, according to testimony. The prominent man who was accused of ruining Ada was Aaron S. Picard, who was accused of carnal knowledge. He was arrested on September 22, 1908 for violating Act 115 of 1896, which protected young girls. Picard was at 1712 Arado the night of the arrests. On September 22, 1908, the Shreveport Times called Picard, quote, a victim of the consent law, unquote. The Times-Democrat reported that Daisy was released on $250 bond on September 25, 1908. Daisy was ultimately subjected to 4 separate cases because of this incident. One for keeping an immoral house outside of Storyville, also known as the vacate case. One for detaining minors for immoral purposes. Her appeal of the guilty verdict of the vacate case. And another for detaining minors for immoral purposes. She was also held as a witness in a 5th case. Case 1. Daisy was tried and discharged on October 14, 1908, according to the Times-Democrat, for detaining minors for immoral purposes. Simultaneously, Aaron Picard was tried and discharged for violating Act 84 of 1908, carnal knowledge of a minor. Case 2. She was charged again with breaking the new age of consent laws, but Picard was not, according to the newspaper. On October 16, 1908, she was indicted by a grand jury for enticing young girls for immoral purposes, just 2 days after she was acquitted. Aaron S. Picard was not charged, indicted, or tried again. Case 3. On October 3, 1908, Daisy was charged with violating Section 6 of the 1897 Ordinance 13032, or the vacate law. Section 6 states, quote, that wherever a house of prostitution or assignation within or without the limits established by this ordinance may become dangerous to public morals, either from the manner in which it is conducted or the character of the neighborhood in which it is situated, the mayor may, on such facts coming to his knowledge, order the occupant of such house, building, or room to remove therefrom within a delay of 5 days, by service of notice on such occupants in person, or by posting the notice on the door of the house, building, or room, to remove therefrom within a delay of 5 days. And upon such occupants failing to do so, each shall be punished as provided in section of this ordinance. It's worth noting here that the attorney representing her is Richard B. Otero, who is the same Judge Richard B. Otero mentioned in Josie Arlington's obituary. He was married to John Thomas Brady's sister. Tom Brady was who Josie claimed as her husband, even though they were never officially married. So Otero was Josie's brother-in-law. She was found guilty in the vacate case on October 30th, and she appealed. Case number 4. Her appeal was affirmed in January 1909, and she was found guilty again of keeping an immoral house outside of the Storyville district. The district attorney at the time, Sinclair Adams, conducted an interview with the New Orleans Times-Democrat in March 1909, accusing the jury of not being good after they acquitted an accused pickpocket. The interview provides a little insight into how he thought about trying cases. Quote, all my work to get good juries has been absolutely futile, and the responsibility for this state of affairs rests with the new jury commissioners. I do not hesitate to say that the criminal district court has not been getting the class of jurors that it is entitled to, either from the standpoint of intelligence or from that of good citizenship, unquote. He refused to try any more cases with juries from that panel, including Daisy's case for enticing girls. The other pending cases were attempted murder and carnal knowledge. That article makes it seem that Sinclair believed that juries were good if they agreed with him. He did in fact request a new jury panel the next day. The jury was not pleased with his newspaper ranting and stated clearly that they knew what they were doing when they acquitted the accused pickpocket. Quote, on behalf of the entire panel, I wish to protest most solemnly against the district attorney's action in this matter, and his language condemning us as a result of the verdict rendered in the Hayes case Tuesday, unquote, said juror George Scratchley. On October 25, 1909, before her second case for enticing young women had been tried, her son shot her husband, his stepfather, in a chaotic scene. Quote, the neighborhood was aroused about 11 o'clock last night by the pistol shooting. Just about that time, a Clio car with several passengers was making its way onto Carondelet Street. The first shot caused some people to raise the windows, and when the headlight of the car showed up, they were able to see a man fall by a small bridge almost in front of the house of the Haines woman. Then there was a yell, and a woman rushed out to where the man was and placed his head in her lap and began stroking his forehead and calling him by the name of William." Unquote. She was locked up again as a witness for the trial against her son for shooting her husband, Case 5. Daisy's son was Lee, and he was acquitted on November 16th, and they were released, having served almost a month in jail. The result of the State versus Daisy Haines case is not recorded in the archives. When I asked why a case wouldn't be recorded, the archivist told me that it could have been dismissed. I think that after Lee Parker shot William Schlitting, Sinclair Adams moved on from Daisy. If I had to guess, I would investigate the laundry run by Aaron S. Picard, who was not deposed for the case. Perhaps Daisy was helping to traffic young women to and from New Orleans for sex work. Picard was possibly working with Daisy to use Dixie Laundry as a cover, or maybe he was just an avid patron of her services. Either way, using the laundry as a cover is slightly ironic, given the history of using laundries as a way to reform fallen women through the Magdalene laundries and forced labor. Or maybe it makes perfect sense. The law focused on Daisy, though, not the much more powerful man running the laundry or the newspaper man they never managed to find. It's not ironic or coincidental or even surprising in the least that the man originally accused with her, and was probably largely profiting from whatever was happening, was removed from the claws of justice so she could be accused on her own. The laws around sex work were about controlling and segregating women and preventing them from using the necessary evil of sex work to advance their position. It was never about protecting women, as this case illustrates. What happened to everyone? Sinclair Adams, the district attorney, was district attorney until 1912, so he spent a good chunk of his career as district attorney from 1908 through 1912 chasing after Daisy. He also prosecuted Lulu White and famously remembered in his obituary the KKK. He joined his son in practice in 1943. That partnership eventually became the firm Adams and Reese in 1951, which still exists in New Orleans. Sinclair remained a prominent citizen through his life, but he took his own life in 1945 at his residence at 4626 St. Charles Avenue. He shot himself in the chest. He apparently had a lengthy illness with his heart. In his will, he left $10,000, the equivalent of $175,000 today, to his secretary, who was the only person named in his will besides his family. His residual estate was split between his children. 4626 St. Charles is currently for sale for $2.375 million if you want to try to meet Sinclair's ghost. Sinclair and his family are buried in Metairie Cemetery. Daisy was caught in a system and tried to make the circumstances work for her. The last I find Daisy in the records, in New Orleans or anywhere, is in 1910 when she was beaten so badly by her husband, William Schlitting, that he was arrested. The article notes that he had been shot by Daisy's son, Lee Parker, 3 times previously, but survived. I was unable to find any details about the resolution to this incident. However, her marriage record to Schlitting revealed her real name. Daisy was born E.J. Brown, but largely used the name Lily Haney, like her youngest children. The father of Daisy's 4 children, named Haney, was Thomas S. Haney, a newspaperman from Mississippi. Perhaps Tom was the other prominent man at Daisy's the night of the arrest. In her succession, we learn that she actually had 3 husbands, although apparently everyone tried to forget the whole deal with William Schlitting. But according to official records, Tom married a woman named Amanda in 1866. In the 1900 census, Lily lives with her 4 children in Amite, Louisiana as the head of household. She is listed as a married restaurant keeper, but her husband is not listed. Amite was a crossing point on the New Orleans-Jackson line of the Great Southern Railroad. Were Lily and her kids Tom's secret second family? Her children with Tom are listed in an additional 1900 census living in Mississippi with their father. Was Tom the prominent man that was never identified during the trials? Tom was the editor of Farmers Union Progress newspaper in Mississippi, and he was ousted for unbecoming behavior in 1909, around the time that Daisy was getting ready for the second trial in New Orleans. Some sources leave out the unbecoming behavior, but one claims it was because he was trying to organize auxiliary unions for the black farmers in Mississippi, which was not received well by the other union members. He was also a Confederate veteran who died at Beauvoir in Biloxi. people are complicated. His involvement with Daisy in trafficking women and girls to New Orleans is another possibility of the unbecoming behavior, but probably not. The necessary part of the necessary evil was for men. White men. The evil was for women. Lily is listed in the city directories each year after the 1909 incidents through her death, with addresses at 931 Toulouse, 621 Dauphine, and finally 811 Iberville, home to the alibi today. Daisy/Lily died in August 1921 in Mississippi. She claims she was born in 1875, making her about 46 years old, but her children were born in the 1880s. According to the 1900 census, she was born in December 1865, so she was probably about 55 years old. Her last residence was in New Orleans, so her estate was settled without a will in New Orleans Civil Court, where her belongings were sold, her debts paid, and the remaining $200 was split between her 4 children, 2 of whom seemed to be estranged. Each child received roughly $900 in today's money from their mother's estate. I could not find burial information for Lily. The most winding trail from the saga is that of Aaron S. Picard, the laundry manager who was arrested for carnal knowledge and was acquitted in 1908. His name is mentioned in most of the articles about Daisy even after he was acquitted. He is connected to the Roosevelt Hotel, Huey P. and perhaps the mafia of New York and New Orleans. After he was acquitted, Aaron S. Picard became the president of Dixie Laundry. He apparently had a wife and kids through the whole ordeal because he is married for 7 years in the 1910 census. The accusations did nothing to spoil his career. He's listed in the society pages throughout his life, as are his wife and children. He sent his children to Newman for school. His daughter married Julius Weiss in June 1922 in the Gold Room of the Grunewald Hotel, which became the Roosevelt in 1923. Julius's brother Seymour Weiss was the owner of the Roosevelt Hotel from 1931 through 1965, rising from the barbershop manager. He was a close confidant of Huey P. even by his side when he died in 1935. Seymour was given a full and unconditional pardon by President Truman in 1947 for tax evasion after he spent a couple of years in federal prison. His story is recounted in a 2023 article, How Did a Barbershop Manager Rise to a Hotel Owner? Curious Louisiana Investigates, from The Advocate. But, in sum, it is speculated that he had enough money to buy the hotel because he was profiting, along with Huey P. from slot machines brought to New Orleans from New York by the mafia. This pretty open knowledge about gaining wealth through unscrupulous means leads me to believe that his involvement in trafficking women is also not too far removed from the reality of Aaron S. Picard. In 1925, Aaron became president of High Grade Realty Company, and the write-up included a biography. Quote, the new president of High Grade Realty Company is a native of New Orleans and is manager of the Dixie Laundry, president of Dixie Radio Company, secretary-treasurer of Julius Weiss and Company, and is connected with other concerns, unquote. In the late 1920s and 1930s, Aaron is mentioned in the paper when his property is seized and sold a few times. I guess Aaron didn't like paying taxes either. In 1934, his daughter was killed in a car accident. In 1936, Aaron became the manager of the Roosevelt Hotel Laundry, where he worked for 10 years. In 1946, at 75 years old, he died suddenly while sitting at his desk at work in the hotel. I found it interesting that the only photo I could find of him immortalizes him behind such a desk. His work seems to have been his life. He is buried alone in Metairie Cemetery. His wife and daughter are in the grave next to him. His parents are in Hebrews Rest, Cemetery Number 1. Daisy is a good example of how tenuous the business of sex work was, even during the romanticized Storyville era. Why was Sinclair Adams after Daisy in particular, not the men accused with her? Why were those men allowed to freely use their government names, while Daisy or Lily had to hide behind many aliases? While I can't say for sure, it's clear that the goals of Storyville were taking as much power from women as possible, accusing them of any crime and locking them up instead of the powerful men patronizing them, while segregating them away from respectable society. Erato is the goddess of mimicry or imitation in addition to erotic poetry. So maybe Daisy looked to her for inspiration when creating her varieties of flowery names. I have 2 more wild cases to share to complete the saga of Storyville, Lulu White and Willie Piazza. This Storyville series has taken me significantly longer than expected because the cases are so much more interesting than surface-level interpretations have led me to believe. Find links to all the previous installments in the description. If you're interested in more about the children of Storyville, find a link to my blog, Once Upon a Time in Storyville, the district's children, also linked below. I look for clues in Balak's portraits and the census data to find out more about the children of the district. Please like and subscribe for more tours and stories from the deep coming soon.